Truth Plus Media.
I'm Mike Gastineau, and welcome to another edition of Iconic Sonics. Iconic Sonics is brought to you by Rise Above. Our title sponsor, Rise Above, is a nonprofit organization that educates Washington's Native youth through sports and especially basketball. You can learn more about their great work at nativeyouthriseabove.org today. The Edgewater Hotel is proud to bring you Iconic Sonics. It's Seattle's only overwater hotel. They offer unobstructed views of the Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains. The Edgewater, the official hotel of Sonics fans everywhere. Iconic Sonics is also brought to you by the sensational Queen Anne Beer Hall. Great place before and after any event at Climate Pledge Arena. Epic Seats is a trusted local business with tickets to the events you love in Seattle. EpicSeats.com. Nothing beats Epic Seats. And our media partner this year is Seattle Magazine. You can learn more about what they're up to at seattlemag.com. And now, a new episode of Iconic Sonics with Luke Ridnour. Great to be with you on Iconic Sonics, and we have a guy who was a part of some of the last great Sonics teams that we saw before the team departed town. He is one of the most decorated players in Washington State high school basketball history. He is one of the great Oregon Ducks ever, and he had a great 12-year, 13-year run in the NBA. Luke Ridnour, who is walking around his place up near, I think up near Blaine, Washington, and keeping an eye on kids today. Is this what I hear you're doing these days? Is watching all the kids?
Yeah, we got 6 boys, so keeping us in line.
Wait, I says I gotta follow it up. 6 boys, no girls. You got 6 boys in the house?
6 boys in the house. Yeah, no girls.
Oh man, your poor wife. I bet that's keeping everybody busy all the time, huh?
All the time. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a fun household, that's for sure.
What's the age range, Luke?
We got a 14-year-old, we got twin 12-year-olds, we got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 6-month-old.
Oh man, you guys are working. It's hard. What's harder, like being in mid NBA season shape or being a dad to 6 kids? I think I know the answer.
Definitely being a dad. NBA, you can take naps. You got all that downtime. Not happening here.
Luke, what are you doing these days? I know you've got some charitable work you're doing. Obviously, you're a dad. That's taking up a lot of your time. Bring people up to date who we haven't talked for a long time. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, I'm just, we started a basketball gym up here where we run a bunch of community. We're kind of like a YMCA. We run a bunch of programs and stuff for kids, just getting them in sports, and got some AAU teams, helping out with some high school basketball, just coaching all my kids' teams. So it's pretty fun, full tilt, but it's a good time.
Didn't you play for your dad in high school? Do I remember that right?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a full circle thing. Do you find yourself like flashing back occasionally, like you're coaching your kids now and you've got to treat them like any kid on the team, but it's also your kid? Do you recall like your dad and having to go through those things?
Yeah, a little bit. And I never really had the desire to get into coaching, but once you start having someone else coach them, you're like, man, I better get in there and actually teach them.
So you played high school basketball. You were Mr. Basketball in the state. You won 2 state championships, and you played for your dad. What were the pros and the cons of that, or were there cons at all? I mean, I always think it might be tough to play for your father. It can put the whole relationship in maybe a challenging place, or maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the case. What do you remember good and bad about those days of playing for dad?
You know what? For me, growing up in a small town, it was fun just because he was a high school coach before I got there. So I grew up just watching the teams and being a part of it, and just really just all I wanted to do is play high school basketball, just because in our town, that's what the big deal was. So looking up to those guys, and it was never really like it was my dad coaching. It was just like he was coaching the team and I was going to get to play for him one day. So it was always pretty positive for us. I just, we didn't have many kids trying out, so it wasn't like it was a battle for playing time and stuff like that. It was just kind of got to play right away, and everyone knew I had to play. I was better than all those other guys, so that part made it easier. And it was just fun to play for like I said, your small town up here and try to win. It was awesome.
So you're a small town star in the state of Washington. Again, you 2 state championships. Then you go to Oregon. You have a great career there. Then you're drafted by the Sonics. Did it kind of hit you at one point that This is not necessarily how it always works for guys. A lot of times you'll go far away to go to college, or you'll get drafted by a team on the other side of the country. You were fortunate because you're a small town guy and you're a Washington guy. You were fortunate, aren't you, that you were able to stay near home?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I think at the time you don't really realize how blessed you were, or I was, to be able to be in that situation. And once I got traded to the Bucks and was away from being in Seattle and just around everybody, I started to realize how special it was when I was there. In the moment, it was so much pressure, and just, you knew everybody. I think I put too much on it. It was too much self pressure at the time. But once I got away from it and just saw how cool it was to actually get drafted by your hometown team, home state team, it doesn't happen very much. So I think I realized it kind of later in my career how good we had it, and never got to go back to Seattle to play. So we always missed just the chance to get to play in front of the fans there again, and just really a lot of people that I grew up with and knew. But I really realized it once I got out of here, or got out of Seattle and played on other teams, just how cool it was to be able to have that opportunity.
Luke, you played here, and you were here right till the end. And then I think you get the team has left, but you got traded. You never played in Oklahoma City, right? You got traded that summer.
Yeah.
What was it like? You're a kid, you're growing up here. I'm assuming, even though you're in Blaine, which is a couple hours north, you're following the Sonics. I mean, those glory days with Peyton and Kemp, that you had right when you're in grade school, kind of, a junior high.
Yeah.
And now you get drafted, you get to play for them, and then things completely out of your control, business things dictate ultimately that the team ends up leaving town. Did it pull at your heartstrings? I mean, you couldn't do anything about it, but take me through what you felt like during that time as a Washington native and a guy very connected to the Northwest.
Yeah, it hurt bad. Just, I could kind of feel it coming after they let Nate McMillan go. And you could just see things changing with the front office as soon as the team got sold. And the new guy came in. Was it Bennett? I think his name was.
Yeah, Clay Bennett.
Clay Bennett. Yeah, you could just feel that whole last year, it just wasn't the same feel that it was the previous 4 years. You could sense something was changing and moving. And I think for guys that were on the team before, that had success with the team before those guys came, it was pretty painful, just because you knew what we were trying to build, and all of a sudden their plan was pretty different than what was there before. And you knew the team wasn't going to be there. So it was kind of like we were on a ship that was sinking. And for me, I was just trying to get off of it and get somewhere I knew that would be better.
So you welcomed then when they did the deal. I mean, you would have gone to Oklahoma City. You're a professional and you're making your living playing basketball, and things can be out of your hand. But did you welcome hey, I never had to play at Oklahoma City, I got to go somewhere else? Was that a good thing for you?
Oh, 100%. As soon as I knew it was happening, I was trying to. I mean, you can only do so much, but I definitely let it known that I would like to get out of there and get a new spot. And like I said, it was a tough situation. It was probably the hardest year of my career, that 5th year in Seattle, just because of all the change that was happening, and just new management. Everything is different. So for me, getting out of there was a blessing, and seeing the Sonics leaving, I didn't want to go to Oklahoma City just because there was a lot of stuff going on. But it was tough to see the team go, for sure.
And you'd been through an interesting career arc. You'd come into the league, you'd established yourself. You played on that 04-05 team that we'll talk about in a little while. It was so good, and got to within, a Ray Allen shot of getting to a Game 7 against San Antonio in the second round. And then you guys dip a bit, but you're a smart basketball guy. You've been around the sport long enough to know you had to feel like, okay, here comes Kevin Durant. Here comes Jeff Green.
Yeah.
You guys weren't real good in that 07-08 season, but you certainly could see it was going to get better, couldn't you?
Oh, 100%. You knew it was. It was just, I think for guys that were there, like myself and all the other guys, they basically got rid of, except for Nick and I think.
Yeah.
So you could get a sense that they kind of wanted their own guys in there, and you can't blame them. That's the way the league goes. But you knew they were going to be good. You just didn't know how long it was going to take. And for someone like me that had been there, you could sense that they were going to move on anyway. So
we on this show about I guess it's been about 3-4 weeks ago now, because it was before the Lakers series. We talked to Jeff Green, and I hadn't talked to Jeff for years and years. And what was it like to watch a guy you played with who's still playing? And he's not on some ceremonial victory lap. He's playing big minutes for the world champs. What was it like to watch that series unfold and know that you had, Jeff, and you played with him?
Oh, it's always fun. I've had a few of those guys, even coaches that are on like the Nugget staff, just to see. Aaron Gordon's another guy I played with as a rookie in Orlando. So just to see those guys. And Jeff's such a good dude, just to see, humble guys like that have kind of paid their dues, spent a lot of time just around different organizations, get a chance to play for a championship. You only can root for them. So it's just fun to see.
Did you see any of the footage on social media of Aaron walking through the streets of Denver after the game, like with the fans all around him? I think he was carrying either a beer or a champagne or something. He's drinking something. And he's just walking through the streets. I think he still had his uniform pants on. He's lost his jersey at some point. And people are did you see that? I mean, it was fantastic.
That's amazing. I don't have social media. I didn't see any of it, but I could see that happening. He's a good dude too.
Yeah, it was, I was happy to see Denver win. And not that would have been unhappy for Miami, but Denver, and it's interesting, isn't how, we'll see now if the game is going to change again. It seems like for a long time now, we've focused on teams that can knock down the three. And that 04-05 Sonics team had a bunch of guys who could shoot from the perimeter. They almost looked like a team that was built for today.
Yeah.
And yet Jokic makes you wonder if teams aren't going to, although go find the next Nikola Jokic. I don't know how easy a job that would be. You got any kids in your gym that look like Nikola?
I like that guy. That reminds me like when Tim Duncan era, there was just nobody else like him. It's kind of the same thing with him. He's a one of a kind.
And it'll be interesting to see how much impact he has on the game now from this point on, in terms of people either trying to find other big guys or just trying to play that way. But that I kind of stumbled into something there. That 04-05 team, they were a little bit like today's NBA team, weren't they? I mean, you guys had a ton of guys who could shoot from the perimeter.
Yeah, it was kind of the first era of that happening. I mean, the Suns were doing it. We were doing it. There was a few teams just shooting a lot of threes and playing fast. But the game has even changed more since then. It's more 5 out, everyone can shoot. Centers are shooting threes. We didn't have a lot of that when I was playing. But as far as guys just letting it fly and can all shoot, I mean, obviously we had Ray and Richard, two of the best of all time. So it was fun to be able to play like that. And it's just fun to see the game evolve, and every year it seems like it gets better and better.
You brought up Ray and Richard, and we had one of our researchers named Corey Jackson came up with a great question for you. Who would win? It's a speculative question, which I know all guys like. Who would win in a game of 2-on-2 if everyone's in their prime? KD and Jeff Green, or Richard and Ray?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah?
I think that's tough. Both those guys, all four of those guys are great. So, but Ray and Richard, those guys can put 50 on you pretty quick. I don't know. I'm going old school, taking the two old fellas.
Yeah, you're gonna go with the guys you went with. Yeah, and Richard is an interesting guy, and I don't know if it's because of the era he played in or whatever. He can. I don't want to say he's the forgotten Sonic, but boy, I mean, he was so good and he's again another guy, one of those big guys that came in and could really shoot. He must have been fun to play with for a distributor like you, because you knew you were going to get your assist numbers with him.
Yeah, he was awesome. Just I mean, one of the first that could post and just step out and shoot threes. And just the thing about him, he was just so well-rounded. He could pass, he could do it all. And he was a great teammate. Like, he's always encouraging, always there, had your back. That's a guy that probably one of my favorite guys I've ever played with. So just getting to play with him was a lot of fun.
Luke Ridnour, our guest on Iconic Sonics. We'll look back at his Oregon career and the start of his NBA career when we continue. Iconic Sonics is brought to you by Swinomish Casino and Lodge. Swinomish Casino and Lodge and their Unibet Sportsbook, where you can place bets on all your favorite games. And Swinomish Casino and Lodge is proud to announce Summerfest back on July 22nd. Keep your calendar open for big fun at Summerfest. You can find your next big win at SwinomishCasinoandLodge.com. Iconic Sonics continues. Mike Gastineau with our guest Luke Ridnour, two-time state champ out of Blaine. Luke, I was trying to remember, and it's been long ago now. You may not remember, although it happened to you. You end up at Oregon, and you have a great run there. You guys get to the Elite Eight once. You get to the NCAA tournament a couple of times. Was Washington in the mix at all for you, or Washington State, or was it always going to be Oregon? How did your recruiting go, and did you consider any place else besides Eugene?
Gonzaga, UW, and Oregon were my three finals. I visited Kentucky, but it came down to those three. UW was kind of in a tough spot with Bender. I didn't know if he's going to be back or not. And then Gonzaga was really up and coming, but I always dreamed as a kid just to be able to play in the Pac. Back then it was a Pac-10, so that was kind of my goal to try to play at that level. And Oregon wasn't very good when I was coming through, but I just loved Matt Court when I went there, and just the feel of it. It was like Hoosiers for me. So that kind of was a big deal for me. So going down there and getting to play there, and I was going to get to start right away. That's why I tell kids all the time, go where you can play, because you only go through it once. So that's kind of what it came down for me.
Mac Court is, I think, my favorite basketball venue ever. I've been in a lot of great venues, and no disrespect to any of the others, but talk a little bit about that building when it was loud and rocking, and it was old, and it was rickety, and it had a bunch of different areas. What was that place like to play in?
I think you hit it. It's just iconic. I mean, I remember playing games there, Pac-10 games, when the whole would start shaking. They'd have to call a timeout to try to get the fans to calm down. And I mean, you're in the locker room, you can just hear people running up and down the court, getting in their stands. It was just like an old house. It was just beat up and, like you said, rickety, but it had something about it. It got so loud in there and was so fun. And I got Pac-10 game there against a good team. There's probably no other place like it.
And you get out of Oregon again. You had a great run there. You get out, and you're going to get drafted into the NBA. When did you realize? I mean, did you have any inkling the Sonics? They had 2 picks in that draft. They took some guy named Nick Collison with the 12, and we're banking on you still being there, I guess. And you were with the 14. When did you find out you were going to Seattle? Was it when they picked you? Did you have any idea they were interested in you?
Yeah, we had an idea. It was either going to be Golden State at 13 or Seattle at 14. And I think Utah had a later pick, and it probably would have been there. But my whole draft experience was tough just because I was hurt. I actually had a sports hernia. I had to have surgery on it, so I couldn't work out for many teams. And I just had to trust the Lord had my back. He was going to put me where I was supposed to be. So, but I found out. I was at home, had a bunch of friends over at the house. As soon as the pick came up, my phone rang, so I knew it was coming. But that was quite the experience, just to be able to, as a small town kid, to be able to get picked, to your home state. It was pretty surreal.
I think you and Nick Collison have stayed close over the years, and I'm wondering, does he ever grind you on getting drafted 2 ahead?
He did when we used to play together, but yeah, me and Nick are still close, still talk to him all the time. And I'm glad he went 12. That means he had more pressure than me.
That's right. I want to ask you, so your rookie season, you go through camp, and the Sonics open the season in Tokyo with the NBA game. They're regular season games. You guys played 2 games against the Clippers, and there's a few things I remember about that trip. I was on the trip. The 2 I really remember are, you remember Richard goes for 50 on Saturday afternoon. I looked at the box score. It's unbelievable, the assist totals in that game. How many? Let me see here. You had you had 6. Flip had 7. Brent Berry had 7. Richard had 4. I don't know how Richard had 4. How do you have time to take all those shots and get 4 assists? That was a fun game. Well, it must have been, I mean, it was the second game of the season, but it's kind of your introduction into the NBA. Did you kind of think, oh, this is going to be great. We'll have a guy score 50 every night and nobody will beat us?
I remember thinking, I can't believe I got to be a part of someone scoring 50, because just college, you don't see that happening. Not many guys get going like that. And then to be able to happen right away in the NBA was like, I was like, wow, this kid is good. So just to be a part of it, and then especially as the season goes, you see how hard it is to score like that, and get experience it so quick. And in Japan or Tokyo, that was fun, just to be able to have that be your first, for me, my first part of the NBA, and getting to play, which you don't see regular season games over there like that, like they do, like we did. Right. Then it's kind of weird, but it was quite a start for me to be able to get to see it and be a part of it.
The other story I remember, and I'm hoping you remember it. I think once I hit your memory a couple of times, you will. The NBA, and you mentioned earlier that you were injured and you stayed home. You didn't go to New York City for the draft.
Yeah.
And the NBA, the night before the games in Tokyo, they had a reception, and everybody was there, though. The whole league was there in terms of administrators stuff, including David Stern. And you and Richie Fromm were standing talking. And I don't know if you remember this story, but Richie, I think it was Richie he brings me and he says, "Hey, I got a question for you. You know, Luke didn't get his picture taken with David Stern at the night of the draft like a guy normally does. Normally the first round picks, they get their picture." And he said, "I got a Sonics hat upstairs. If I go up and get it, would you talk to David Stern and see if he'd do that?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be now, do you remember this? Am I getting your memory going at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, Richie went up and get the hat and he gives it to, and we went up to David Stern, who, you know, there's people here who blame Stern for the Sonics leaving, and we're never going to make him a warm and cuddly character here. But on that night, I remember him being really gracious with you and talking to you. Do you remember that incident where he would pose with you? I remember he made you switch sides because he said, no, you'd be on this side of me if it was the TV broadcast.
Yeah, I do remember that. Richie, he's like, "You got to do it. This is a memory you're going to have forever." So I was like, all right. And I'm glad you did it because I didn't go ask him either.
I took the photo. I take credit for the photo if you've got it anywhere in your memorabilia. I've got it somewhere, but then I don't know if you remember what happened next. The funny thing is we get done with you, and Stern looks at Richie Fromm, goes, "What about you?" And Fromm's an undrafted free agent who's made the team out of Gonzaga. And he goes, "Okay." So we get a picture of Richie Fromm shaking hands with the commission.
I love it. Yeah. Classic.
He was a good dude. I mean, he got a lot out of his career given where he came from. He was a fun guy, wasn't he? He could play a little bit at the pro level.
Yeah, he did really well. Just a good guy, works hard. It's fun to see guys like that make it for a few years.
So that's the first season, and you guys you roll along. What was Nate like? You're playing for Nate, and then you play for him on a playoff team the next year. But what was it like playing for a guy whose shoes you were kind of arguably trying to fill? You're trying to be the guy running the show out on the floor. What was it like being that guy as a rookie for Nate?
I really liked it just because he was hard-nosed. You know, he was tough. The thing about Nate that I always appreciated, I mean, I had a lot of coaches over my NBA career, and he was I had a few, but one of the few that held everybody accountable, whether you're the superstar or you're the 13th man. He treated you the same, and he held you to the same rules as everybody else. And I think that's why he's had such a long coaching career. Is he just he treats everyone the same, and he knows what he's doing.
And he's the guy that in 04-05 and really you guys put together a great roster, a great team, and you get off to an unbelievable start. I think you went 9-1 at the start of the year. Was 04-05 for you? Was it your most memorable and happiest and most successful season in terms of you're on a 52-game winner that goes to the second round of the playoffs? Is when you think back on your career, is that the year that sticks out to you the most?
It's one of them. I mean, definitely in Seattle, it was our best run, and you could just the chemistry that we had as a team and everyone getting to be a part of it. You know, feel like they had. I mean, a lot of guys had their best career years that year. Antonio Daniels, Ray Allen, Richard had amazing years that year. But what I remember most about that year is just being in the playoffs. We beat the Spurs at home, and I got back on, I don't know, what is that, Mercer Street that goes onto the freeway?
Yeah.
And I could hear, like, once it was packed, you couldn't move. So the fans were still in their cars yelling Super, and the other side would yell Sonics. And I just remember just thinking, this is incredible. Like, I'm a part of what I got to watch growing up with Peyton and Kemp, and just seeing the fans for those series. And then I was a part of it. And like, no one ever recognized me, so I could be anywhere and they wouldn't know who I was. So it was fun just to be able to be in the fans, part of it, outside of the arena, and just see the excitement and just how much the Sonics meant to that city.
It's a theme we hit on all the time, and it feels, and it's taken a long time, but it feels optimistic right now that there is going to be a return of the NBA, and hopefully in Seattle and maybe in Las Vegas as well as expansion teams. But you hit on something. Talk about your relationship with the city and your impressions of the city here you are now. You're not in college anymore. You're not a kid. You're a young man, and you're your own guy. You're getting paid. You're a professional. What do you remember about Seattle in addition to those first two stories?
Oh, just like the fans they're very knowledgeable. They know basketball. I mean, they like watching good basketball, and just how passionate they were about the Sonics. I mean, we had some tough years when I was there too. Just with especially when KD and those guys came, we didn't win like 19, 20 games, but people would still show up, still supporting you. But just the passion for the Sonics, they'd been there so long. And I think that's why it's hurt so bad, is that the whole city was invested, not just the city, but the state was invested in the Sonics. And still today, wherever I go, it's when are the Sonics coming back? How was your experience? It's never about any other city. It's always about the Sonics or any other team that I played for. So I think it's just the passion that they have for that team and that franchise. And I think in everyone else's mind, the Sonics still exist in Seattle, even though they don't get to play. So hopefully it happens again one day.
That 04-05 team, and I was trying to think back on what happened. Did something weird happen in April? I know you guys really staggered at the finish. You were rolling all year, and then I think you lose 8 of your last 10 or something. You recover and beat Sacramento in the playoffs, and you pushed San Antonio. So it really doesn't matter. But do you recall that losing streak, or what triggered that?
Yeah, I think Richard was hurt and didn't play. Yeah, it was Richard was hurt, and Radmanovich was kind of in it. He was a big part of what we were doing too, just the way he could shoot the ball. Both those guys were kind of just hobbling along, trying to make it to the end. So I think he rested them a lot. And I remember myself personally, just first time playing, I think I played all 82 games that year. You're just like in survival mode that last month. Mentally. So just being able to fight through that. And then I think once we hit the playoffs, everybody got rejuvenated and those other guys got healthy, and we knew we were good. We just had to get going again.
And you beat the Kings pretty easily 4-1 in the first round. And now you've got San Antonio, as you mentioned, they win 2 down there. You guys win 2 up here. And then you lose 1 down there. You come up here for game 6. I don't know about you, Luke. I can still see Ray Allen in the corner. Yeah. It wasn't an easy, wide open look. Let's be honest here. It wasn't like Ray missed a wide open 3, but he got you're thinking it's Ray Allen. I remember thinking he's getting a pretty good look at this. Can you still see that shot in your mind?
I can. I actually remember the play before it was Ginobili did his little famous Euro step, somehow got it up, and I think somebody tipped it in after he missed it. So I remember thinking we have this game because I think we were up. I can't remember exactly, but then I remember the out of bounds play. Ray got a great look at it. It was a tough shot, like you said, but we were close, and it would have been fun to be able to get them in one more game, because you never know what can happen. But that was a fun team. I mean, we didn't have Richard for that game either. He was hurt.
That's right.
Yeah, we were still battling. So
you mentioned a guy who's one of my favorite Sonics ever, just because he thought he had a unique game, and B, was such an interesting character. What was Vladimir Radmanovich like behind the scenes? What kind of guy was he?
Classic. That's all you can say. He's just a classic guy. Like, I mean, he cared, but he also didn't care. He was just kind of free for all type guy. But man, he could shoot. He had all the talent in the world. So to see him that year, I think he had a career year that year as well. Just to see him kind of start to hit the stride where he could. But just a great guy. Never ate anything but one big meal, and then he would go play. I never knew how he did it.
I remember Kevin Calabro hung the nickname Broadway Joe on him, and it was completely lost on Radmanovich because he hadn't grown up here. He didn't really know who Joe Namath was. Yeah. But once Kevin did it, it's like, he looked like Joe Namath, didn't he? I mean, he just at a glance, you'd go, that looks like Broadway Joe. He's taller and thinner, but he looks like Joe Namath. That was an accurate call. It
was really good. He was right on. That's Calabro, though. He's one of the best ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke Ridnour, our guest. We've got one segment left. It's Iconic Sonics. Iconic Sonics is brought to you by Simply Seattle, and Simply Seattle is the biggest Sonics apparel store in the entire world. We checked. It's true. Locally owned by Sonics fans with tremendous Sonics gear from all the eras of the Supersonics. If you want it, they've got it at Simply Seattle. You can get 15% off your order with the code ICONIC15. Show your love for the Sonics at simplyseattle.com. Our media partner this year is Seattle Magazine. Find out more about them at seattlemag.com. Our final segment with Luke Ridnour. He's not kidding. He's a dad. He's had to go inside now and, I don't know, mediate some disputes and settle a few things. It's a 24/7 gig being the pop in that family, and Luke's up for the task. We talked off the top about you've got a gym up there and you work with kids. So I mean, I wanted to ask you what role basketball still plays in your life, and I'm guessing if you're doing this, it's almost a daily role or certainly a regular role that you're in a gym and working with guys. The game gets in you, doesn't it? I mean, the guys that succeed at your level, there's a love, right? That's really the only word that describes it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just spend your whole life into one thing, and for me, I just loved it. It was part of who I was and what I did, and all my kids play hoops now, and I just always wanted to give back to the community that I grew up in and the kids around here. And up here, they closed down the YMCA when I moved here. So there was a big need for a gym and a place for kids to have the opportunity to play and compete. So we bought an old church and we turned the gym the sanctuary into a full court, high school size court, and put some side hoops on it. And yeah, we run leagues in it and tournaments and all kinds of stuff. So it's been awesome to be a part of it, and be fun to coach all my kids' teams and do some stuff with some of the high school kids around here and the high school team that we're in. So just being around it's been, like you said, you can't get it out of your system.
Well, and it's, we talk about people wanting to give back to the community. That's amazing to be able to, I mean, I know you're a thoughtful guy. I know Christianity is a very important part of your life. For you to be able to go home and to say, okay,
Yeah.
I did very well as a basketball player. I made a lot of money, and I'm going to take some of it and directly impact the kids. I mean, how much satisfaction does that give you some nights where you're sitting around going, okay, this is why I'm here?
Yeah, it's definitely it. My wife is amazing too, and she's good at helping organize everything. And she was an athlete as well that played volleyball at Central Washington. So for both of us, just to be able to be around sports and kids, and that's kind of what our heart is around, is just kids, to be able to have them have the same chance that we did to be able to play and compete. And you just learn so much from sports, more than just wins and losses and making it to college or whatever it is. Just the life lessons you learn from it. It's been fun, and that's like you said, why I'm here and why I'm back in this community up here.
And is this all under the umbrella? I know the foundation you've got is called Rid's Kids. Is this all part of that, or is that other things that you're doing in the community?
Yeah, it's all under that. We also, we do a bunch of stuff where we give away clothes and food, and we do haircuts for kids for free, and just give them all school supplies. We just try to do everything we can for this community to help it be better and help the kids in it. But mainly it's the sports is what we do a lot of, and the other stuff is just kind of every year or two we'll do some giveaway stuff.
What kind of coach are you? Are you a demonstrative? Are you a guy going up and down the sidelines letting people have it? Are you thoughtful? If I came to see one of your teams play, what am I going to see on the sidelines out of Luke Ridnour?
You're going to see an encourager, man. I think kids need to be encouraged. I go to some of these AAU tournaments and I'm like, I can't believe the guys that are coaching these kids. I think anyone growing up, I think it's got to be fun. Number one, if you're not having fun, you're not going to enjoy playing. Number two, you just got to be the biggest fan of these kids and just encourage them. And I'll get ticked at them every once in a while, but it's just to get them to play a little bit harder. But for the most part, I'm just going to have fun and yell at the refs here and there.
Yell at the refs here and there. I mean, that's ingrained in anybody, right? You can't really coach and not yell at the refs.
You can't. I mean, it's fun to yell at these kids, especially AAU coach referees. They're all not that great, so it's fun to get on them. And once they realize that I played, it's funny to see how the game changes.
Yeah, how does it change?
Yeah, it's just once they realize, you're like, oh, you're Luke Ridnour. I'm like, yep, you better start reffing the game a little bit better. We get a few calls here and there. It's kind of fun.
I'm trying to think of who all you played for, Luke. Who was Nate? I mean, I always thought was a fun coach to watch, and he was demonstrative and a guy who would get after it and had a temper if it needed. Was he the most like that, or there are other guys? Who else? I'm trying to think of who else you played for that would be like him.
Scott Skiles was amazing. He had some great tantrums. He was a
Yeah.
fun guy to play with. I played for Rick Adelman. He was a great coach. Just a not a demonstrative type guy, but super encouraging. Just knew his stuff. But Scott was a really fun guy to play for, just because you never knew what was going to happen.
You're talking about coaches having tantrums. I've had guys tell me that sometimes the hardest thing is when you've got a coach yelling at the whole team is not laughing, like because the play. I mean, the coach is coming from a place of love usually, and is trying to light a fire. And by the same token, they're going to say things that are funny. They're going to do things that are. Is it tough to keep a smile from coming on your face when somebody's up there acting like a 5-year-old trying to get your attention?
It is funny. I mean, like you say, I think the kid comes out in everybody in sports and even coaches. So just try not to laugh, because if you laugh, it's just going to make more sprints come. So it is always fun just to see that, though.
Yeah. What do you like the game today? And we talked about the Nuggets earlier, and they're an interesting team. It'll be interesting to see how long they can stay at the top. It looks like maybe a while, but we'll see. But the overall tone of the game, it feels like it's much more outside focused, the way Golden State impacted the game. And again, maybe things will change, and it will, basketball always evolves. Do you like how it's played now more, or do you miss like your time or the time before you? I mean, what was the style of NBA that you liked the most?
I love seeing it now, the up and down, just to see, it's not just one or two teams doing it. Everyone's trying to get up and down and play fast. I love that part of it. I don't love the whole the fouling part of it, like the flagrant foul stuff. I mean, you can't even be somewhat physical anymore without something happening. When I played, I remember coming in the league, Derek Fisher would pick me up full court and have his hand on my hip the whole time. So just that part is gone. The physicality of the game is gone a little bit. And I think guys sit out a lot more, which I'm not a big fan of. You get paid to play, and you should. And I think the league, it started to change as far as guys coming in right away and not having to earn anything. You just got, especially on the bad teams, the rookies come in, they just let you play instead of earning your time. So some parts I like, some parts I don't. But the overall, just the way the game is played, I like that part now.
And it's as I said, it always evolves. I mean, I talk to any NBA guy you talk to, and I don't care if you played yesterday, in the aughts when you were a player, in the 90s when Peyton was playing, everyone, well, it was much more physical when I played. I mean, Jack Sick will say, oh boy, you should have played when I played. You want to see some physical. So it is, you're going to always kind of default to your own era, right? Of, well, that was when it was really the toughest.
Yeah, for sure. But the flagrant foul stuff now it amazes me. Like, guys barely touch them, and all of a sudden it's a flagrant 1 or 2. And that part, I know they're protecting players, but sometimes it's just basketball plays.
I'm not opposed to replay in sports, and I like that they get calls right, but I think it can be overused. And I feel like and oftentimes when they do look at it, they go, okay, this isn't a flagrant, so that's good. But it just feels like there is so much, okay, we're going to stop and go look at this now. And obviously the refs second guess themselves. It's hard. I mean, I think do you like all the replay, or would you rather them go back to just calling the game and you live with the mistakes?
I like some of the stuff, like some of the obvious call that, like the ball gets tipped off the wrong guy. I think they get that right. But you're right. Like, you poke a guy in the eye and they got to go look, did he intentionally do it? Did they not? Is it flagrant? I think that part, you could get rid of that part. Everyone can tell when it's an intentional foul. That's just part of the game. But some of the stuff, like you said, the replay stuff, sometimes it helps teams too.
Yeah. What we talked about you growing up, and I kind of made the assumption in one of my earlier questions that you were a Sonics fan. You lived a couple hours north. I'm assuming as a kid you liked the Sonics. I mean, you were seeing their games occasionally and hearing them. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't get to go to many games, but I think he just always ended up with the poster somehow, and he just heard on the newspapers, read about them, and so it was definitely a big part of that. I was also a huge Stockton fan, so it was always the Bulls, Utah on Saturdays. The NBC, you got 1 or 2 games a year or a week on that. And the Grizzlies, I'm like 45 minutes from the Vancouver Grizzlies, so them coming in was a big deal for us. We used to take the train from the border up and pay $5 and watch the game. So I was a low-key Grizzly fan back in the day.
I've always, it's funny, we focus so much on the Sonics for obvious reasons. I've always felt bad for Vancouver. That's a great city, and it should have worked up there too. It'd be, you think of what this Northwest pocket might be like 30 years later if the Grizzlies and the Sonics were still here, and the Blazers, with as good as they've been, there on the slide now, but they've been so good. It's something to think about. Who was your favorite Sonics player? Did you have a guy that you liked the most?
I always liked Gary Payton just because he's a point guard. Remember watching Dale Ellis. He was always a fun one to watch. Those two are probably my all-time favorite. I mean, everybody loved Scheffler around up here too back in the day. Just
sure,
the hardworking big fella. But those guys, I actually remember one of the only games I went to, the X-Man was the big guy. He was the dominant Sonic back in the day. So that guy as well.
Now, X-Man once choked a guy, so he might tell you it was more physical when he played.
Oh, for sure he would. Every year it gets a little tougher and tougher.
That's right. Hey, what would it mean to you? You played in Milwaukee, you played in Minnesota, and I want to get to the end of your career because it's kind of fun to talk about. I don't know if you thought it was fun. I seem to recall you saying it was kind of funny. What would it mean to you to have the Sonics get back up here, to have a franchise that you gave 6 years of your life to, and you're identified with it? You had a lot of fans here. You talk about riding out of the game and sitting on Mercer Street in traffic, listening to the fans. What would it mean to you personally to have the team get back?
It'd be awesome. Now that I have kids too, just to be able to let them experience an NBA team and root for a home state team and take them to games. I mean, I've taken them to a few, but like we went to Phoenix to watch a game. Going all the way down to Portland's not an easy trip with kids. So just be able to have them get to grow up with a team in the NBA and root for a team, a home state team would be amazing. And like I said, I grew up here in the States, so having them be pulled away kind of ticks you off. So just to be able to have a team back would be fun just to be a part of it and feel like you get to root for somebody that's close to you.
The only unbeaten entity in sports is Father Time. He gets everybody, and he finally ran you down right around 2014, 2015. Your minutes are going lower. You're not playing as many games, and the end is near. And I think it was a 5-day period, you were traded, or a 6-day period, you were traded 4 times. I mean, I laugh at it because it wasn't happening to me, but I remember I remember a quote from you saying, "Yeah, this is actually kind of funny." I mean, what was going on there? What do you remember about that?
It was just funny. I mean, I had already told the Magic I had another year left on my deal, but I told them that I was done. I was going to retire, but I didn't come out publicly and say it. I just didn't feel like doing it. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was going to start happening, and then actually to watch it happen and just to see some of the funny lines people come up with, me and my wife were enjoying it.
What I mean, so you say you're done, and then why did teams keep moving you on? Was it just moving your contract through? Was it guys trying to talk you into staying? What was going on?
It was just the contract. It was just an easy one to move around, and I actually had a chance to stay with the Lakers, sign another deal with them. But like you said, I wasn't a guy that enjoyed sitting on the bench, so I knew I would rather be at home with my family and help raise the boys than sit on the bench, which a lot of people might not understand, but for me, that was something that I wanted to do and knew it was time to hang them up. So I knew it was an end, and it was fun to see. At least I made the record books for something, getting traded that many times.
Well, you had a pretty good career. You did a lot of good things, but you are remembered for that. How's your memory? Can you remember the deals, who you were traded for a single guy each time? Can you remember the deals or the order of them? Or I've got it in front of me if you can't.
I honestly didn't even check. It was just funny. My wife would show me every once in a while what people were saying, and that was the part that would make me laugh. So I didn't see who I actually got traded for. I couldn't even tell you what teams I got traded to.
All right, well, here it is. Hang on to your hat, and it's for appearing on Iconic Sonics. Maybe we'll send you a T-shirt for every team that you were traded for. June 24th, you're traded. The Magic trade you to the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for the draft rights to Giannis Timma.
Never heard of that guy.
Yeah, you and me both. The next day, the Grizzlies send you to the Hornets in exchange for Matt Barnes. I remember him.
Okay.
And then later that day, you're traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Jeremy Lamb. And you actually, good for you, you stuck with the Thunder for 3 whole days.
There we go.
And then on the 30th, you're traded to the Raptors. They sent you out of the country by now. You're going to Canada along with cash considerations for the draft rights to Tomislav Zupcik.
Nice. I do remember the Raptors calling and asking me what I wanted to do. I do remember that one.
And did you tell them, I don't want to come to Canada? I'll tell you. Nothing against Canada.
I was not going out there. I mean, I'm so close to Canada. It's not a big deal, but I was done.
Luke, it's fun catching up with you. You were a big favorite down here. You were on, as I said, the last really great Sonics team up to this point, that 04-05 team. You played with some legends. It's fun reminiscing with you, and it's even better to hear of how you're spending your time these days with a great big family, and the amount of stuff you're giving back to the community up there. It just sounds amazing. Good on you, man. That's fantastic. You seem like you're in a pretty happy place these days.
Yeah, I am. I appreciate you guys having me on and all you're doing, and hopefully you get to see some Sonic games here in the future.
When we do, you got to come down and see some of them.
I'll be there. I will be there.
Well, I'd say I get you tickets, but I can't get 8 tickets. I can't get you, your wife, and all the kids. So you're on your own, man. Good luck.
Yeah, we'll have to get a suite somehow.
Thanks, Luke.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Luke Ridnour, our guest on Iconic Sonics. That's it for Iconic Sonics. Thanks to Luke Ridnour for the time and the great stories and walking down memory lane with us. A true Northwest basketball legend. Thanks, Luke. Thanks also to all of our sponsors who make Iconic Sonics possible. We could not do it without them, and we appreciate your support of them as fans of the show Iconic Sonics. You can get more information on what we're up to on this episode, past episodes, future episodes at iconicsonics.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Mike Gastineau. We'll see you next time on Iconic Sonics.